Fisherman once again, and here we're here with Rick Clunn at the Macon Bass Pro Shops in Georgia, and he's going to share a few things about his fishing and some questions we have for him. And I want to say, make sure you visit the Bass College. This is where a lot of this stuff's going to go up. They have a lot of really good stuff. Let's get into this with Rick Clunn. What two mistakes would you say you see weekend anglers making as far as tournaments and stuff?
The main mistake I see weekend anglers make, and now we have to really differentiate, are these tournament weekend anglers, like some of the college kids, or if they're just weekend anglers. If you're just a weekend angler, I don't ever critique them as making mistakes, because they're out there most of the time just to have fun and get away from the office and all that. Now, if you're the college guys out that I've fished with, the one mistake I see they make, and I've seen it with everyone I've ever fished with, is that they practice at the same pace that they fish the tournament at. In other words, on tournament day, you have a pace. A pace is what speed you fish at most efficiently. Okay. Most of them have the same pace in practice that they do in the tournament, and that you shouldn't do that. You should always have a faster pace in practice when you're trying to figure things out, when you're trying to cover water, when you're trying to eliminate water, when you're searching. That should be a much quicker pace. Then when you get in the tournament, you got your key areas now, and now you can slow down and dissect them. Unfortunately, most of the anglers I see are fishing at that same slow pace in practice. What that translates into is you can't cover enough water. In that short amount of time, you have to find fish.
So you're saying in practice to work on eliminating just as much or more water than productive?
Yeah, and to overall consciously develop a faster way of covering water than you would in the tournament. Now in the tournament you want to become more in that dissecting mentality. I'm going to pick everything apart and here and catch the fish I know that live here. But in practice you're not trying to catch every fish, you're trying to learn the water.
Say someone was going to get out of the bass club stuff and fish in tournaments that have 40 to 60 plus boats. Any advice you can give them as far as competing against other anglers, going behind them and getting that perspective that I can do better than the guys I'm fishing against in a certain area?
Well, you have to really have that self-confidence, but that you just can't turn that on and off. You have to develop that. And I think also you have to be observant. Obviously, to me, the number one fishing variable now is no longer weather conditions, it's actually the fishing pressure. And so that means you have to observe your other anglers and be very acute of what they are doing, and then more importantly, sometimes what they're not doing. Because if you're watching them go down the bank, let's say 100 yards ahead of you, and they're both throwing spinner baits, and yet you haven't seen them catch a single fish yet, there ain't no sense you going down that bank doing that. So then you might pick up a square bill or something else if you're determined to fish down that bank. So really, and the other thing to keep in your mind is, even Rick Clunn, even Kevin Van Dam, does not catch every fish down that bank. I've had 10-pounders caught behind me, and so has Kevin. So we're leaving fish, so you just got to figure out how to catch those fish we're leaving behind.
All right. Shout out to the college anglers. If you were going to say what they should try and major in, whether it be something from a fishing side or something outside of, give them a backup plan, give them something to fall off of, because, tournament fishing can be really hard to get into and make it pro. What kind of things would you like to say as far as what they should do, their mentality and major options and stuff?
You probably won't ever have heard this, and I would major in meteor. I'd be a weatherman. What's that, meteorology? I can't even say that word, because I think it's one of the most important things to understand in fishing. And so I've even said if I had to go back to school, I would study, or at least get one of my majors as a weatherman, meteorologist.
What about something like fisheries biologist? Because you talked about studying fish and stuff.
Fishery biologist is I thought even at one point in time I would do that. The problem with being a fishery biologist is that unfortunately they spend more times in the lab than they do on the water, and what that translates into is they work with theory more than reality. One thing that fishing has done in my 39 years of fishing is disprove a lot of their theories. Okay. And yet the biologists, in fact, let me give you an example of that. One time in Toledo Bend back in like 1970, I caught these 2 7-pounders in February. And I had 2 biggest fish I'd caught at that point in time. I was fishing by myself. It was the day before a bass club tournament on the lake. So I ran back to the marina and I weighed them, and there were 2 7-pounders, 2 of the biggest fish I'd ever caught so far. And I'm running back down the lake. It's 38 degrees outside. The water temperature is probably 50, and I'm going to release them. And this fishery biologist with the game wardens happened to be there, and they go, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm going to release them." They said, they're going to die. I mean, fish bites, there's no sense of releasing them. They're going to die with their late mortality. And we get in this argument, okay? Because I, as a kid, had stocked every pond around my little subdivision by carrying fish out of this ditch in paint buckets with their tails sticking out, carrying them across the field. By the time I'd run across all the water splash out, and I stocked every pond, so I knew some of them lived. You know, this long argument went on. He said, fish will die, and finally I looked at him and I said, we're obviously not going to agree, but let me ask you this question. What's going to happen? One thing we will agree on is what's going to happen if I don't let them go. I said, we both know what's going to happen there. I said, so I let them go. I said, now maybe we don't know, but at least they got a chance this way. So I'm not knocking biologists, but biologists really work with theory. They don't always work with reality. Now, I wish we could work together so we could take what theory and see which one proves out in the field. So I'd be a little reluctant to become a biologist, is what I'm saying.
I hear you. You know, in your many years of tournament experience and stuff, do you have any superstitions you try to keep away from that?
No, I don't have any superstitions in fishing. You know, fishing to me is just the whole key is awareness, using all your senses to their highest ability. Most humans are what we call walking zombies. And I always kid with my kids when they play those games on videos about zombies, and I kid them and say, are there real zombies? They go, oh no, these are not real. I say, yeah, they are real zombies. A zombie is something that has no sensory abilities. It's what you call the walking dead. And I said, there's a lot of people, unfortunately, and I say that sadly, that we don't smell, we don't eat our food, you know, we don't even taste it when we eat it. I said, you know, we use our eyes and tunnel vision, we're not in wide angle vision most of the time, and on and on. I said in fishing, really the beauty of fishing is the whole key to it is being totally sensory aware. And, you know, and awareness to me is by far the most important thing, and that's, to me, that's where I get all my data, and that's where all the good data comes from, you know. So if you cut off one of your senses, hearing or whatever, you can hear fish schooling across the lake even though you can't see them. If you cut off one of your senses, you're not getting all the data in.
I remember back in the days, pro versus pro draw in tournaments. Do you wish that would come back? Because a lot of pros, they kind of get stale in their techniques. They get so conditioned to doing what they want to do. Do you think about that?
I had more good days than bad days. Yeah, there were some bad days where you just knocked heads against somebody and you weren't compatible. But I learned a lot. I got to draw Denny Breyer several times. I got to draw Larry Nixon, and I might not have ever got to fish with them guys that I really admire if it hadn't been for those days. Now we don't even have co-anglers, and I really miss those days because a co-angler, to me, every fish you catch is data. And obviously with two guys in the boat, I should be getting more data. Now a lot of guys, you know, really resented the guy behind them catching fish like he was there, that he caught my fish. I didn't ever look at it that way. I looked at it as data. So I kind of do miss sometimes the guy being in the back of the boat. You can cover more water. He can try one thing. You can try something else. If you work together, it's a great scenario. Now, yeah, sure, if you work against each other, it can be a nightmare.
You know, co-angler versus boater.
I think you have to start at whatever level you can. If you don't have a boat, you have no choice. You've got to start as a co-angler. But I just think you need to stay conscious of. Don't ever think just because you outfish the guy in the front of the boat that you're better than him, especially if he's calling all the shots where you go. Anybody can beat you one day, but the key is who's finding the fish. And so always be realizing and trying to understand why he's fishing what he's fishing. You know, how maybe if he's willing to tell you, how did he find these fish? Because that's the biggest difference in the co-angler. I've had co-anglers that I've fished with a lot deceived into thinking they could be a pro, and yet once I got in the front of the boat and had to find the fish themselves, they were totally lost. So don't judge your ability by how good you can catch the fish or if you can beat the guy in the front of the boat catching fish until you've got the job of finding those fish on a daily basis, and then you get good at that. And then that's all I'm saying. I don't care which end of the boat you're sitting in. Be conscious of how those fish are being caught. I mean, found, not caught. The caught is the least important part.
Absolutely. You're a connoisseur of square bill cranking, and your new bait that kind of is coming out now is the deep diving square bill. You got any things you'd like to say about how that's a really good bait, how it could really excel, and where you can get it and stuff like that?
Well, historically, I've had tremendous success on shallow square bills, and it's just, to me, it's just a natural evolution. If a shallow square bill, it deflects better and creates more strikes, then why not a deep diver? And for some reason, they're, up until now, we've really not had a very good deep divers as far as square bills. But we came out with what's called Lucky Strike, and I designed what's called the Freak, and it's an incredible deep diving square bill. It runs, to the 15 to 18 foot levels, depending on how far you cast it and your pound test line and all that. But it has that same intense deflection that a shallow water square bill has, and so that's really what we're trying to achieve. We know the more intense the deflection off the bottom or near bottom object, the more strikes you're going to get. And now we're just trying to recreate that in the deep diver, and I really think we have it in the Freak.
What's your scariest moment on the water that you can think back to?
Almost having the head on in the fog.
Wow.
And it was the year I won the Redman All-American, and we had our regional event at Bull Shoals in Arkansas, and I was leading that regional event going into the final day, and it was foggy, and they let us go. Couldn't even see the guy in the back of the boat, but I was the third boat out, and I've always had a real good built-in GPS in my body, and so I knew the danger, only real danger I thought was if I got turned around and headed back into all these other boats behind me that they were letting go out of that marina. So I was very successful at not doing that, and I got 2/3 of the way to my spot, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, here's a boat, and he's coming, and basically, fortunately, we were just not quite lined up right, because neither one of us had time to flinch. But I'll never forget it. You know how in the movies you'll see two boats like this? They went like this. I mean, when we got side by side, I could touch his boat, and he slapped his hand, and it went into slow motion. And I can't really repeat what he said, but I read his lips when he went by perfectly. He said, "You stupid blankety blank." And I'll never forget as long as I live. Because I'm shaking when he went by, and I go, "You're right, we're both stupid blankety blanks." So, and then here, the warning here is that GPSing now makes that worse. Because guys think they know where they're going, and they go too fast, you GPS, but GPS is not radar.
So we're going to finish it out right here with this last question for you, Rick. What's maybe your least favorite technique, something you think you'd like to get a little better at on the tournament trail?
Oh, my least favorite technique is the Carolina rig. I don't like it because I used it when I guided, and I saw so many more fish got hooked with that technique than any other technique I used. Because even if you're a good angler, because you're feeling the weight and the lure is on the line behind the weight, if they eat that bait and move toward that weight, you can't feel them for a while until they have time to swallow it. And yet I know in tournament fishing sometimes I should be using it, but I developed this resistance and dislike of it, and consequently I don't fish it very often.
All right, Rick, we want to thank you for stopping by and talking to us about a few things, and hope you have a good season this year on the Elite Series, man. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.